I have a problem, and I've had a problem my entire life. I hate being second best at anything I do. I just hate it. Particularly in my business world. I don't like the idea that there's somebody out there serving my customers better than me. I've never liked that idea. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm jealous of them. No, not at all. It doesn't mean that I'm angry or upset with them. No, it doesn't mean that at all. And it doesn't mean that I can't learn something from these folks because, quite frankly, they are the best people in the whole world to learn from when it comes time to learn how to get to where you're going. Well, years ago, I started my own little business. It was called Sommers Communication. And it was one guy. It was just me. And it was a customer service training company. But I had 3 different jobs in that business. I was a customer service trainer. I was the marketing guy, and I was the money guy. I was the accountant. Now, it was interesting. The customer service training guy did a great job. He loved his job. The marketing guy didn't know what he was doing, and the accounting guy just followed everybody around, threatening that we're going to get thrown out of this place if you don't do something about it. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I definitely had schizophrenic tendencies. And actually, there's nothing wrong with that because you're never alone. You have somebody to brainstorm with. I just love that. Have you ever heard this saying, roses are red, violets are blue, I'm schizophrenic, and so am I. Nonetheless, for years, my business was doing okay, and it was because that marketing guy, he didn't know what he was doing. And I remember one day, I left my office. I was on my way home. It was like 6 o'clock at night, and I had a deposit to make, a very small deposit to make at the bank. And as I was walking out of my office, my friend looked at me and he said to me, he said, Bobby, I want you to think about something on the way home tonight. And we'd both been struggling. We shared this little office. He said, how would our lives be different if we were recognized as the authority in our field? And I thought, well, that'd be interesting. I wonder what that would be like. So as I was driving away on my way to the bank, I started wondering about a lot of stuff. I wondered, how would my life be different if I were the recognized expert in my field? Because I wasn't at the time. How would my life be different if customers were lining up wanting to see me instead of me going out to find them? Because what I found is the harder I looked for them, the better they hid. And I didn't like that. I wondered about all kinds of stuff. I remember when I pulled into the drive-through ATM machine, I wondered, why do they have Braille on a drive-through ATM machine? You ever wonder about that? And my whole life changed from that point forward. I paid very close attention to who was behind me at the drive-through bank. But I started reframing the way I looked at my life and the way I was doing business. At least the marketing guy was. Now, let me tell you what I mean by reframing. Reframing means you take an event, you look at it in a completely different way, and it has a completely different look to you. My wife is the queen of reframing. Last year, I was changing out a piece of wood. We had termite damage in our garage. I pull off this piece of wood. Nonetheless, I'm ready to put up another piece of wood, and as I walk over to hammer up this other piece of wood, I stepped on a nail. It went all the way through my big toe. Oh my gosh, believe me, it sounds a lot worse than it was. But I was going to take advantage of every moment I could with this. I fall to the ground, I'm squealing, yelling in pain, hoping my wife hears me, so I get a little sympathy. She didn't hear me, so I yelled a little louder, rolled a little longer. She comes running down, she goes, honey, what's the matter, what's the matter? I said, I stepped on a nail and it went all the way through my big toe. She said, reframing, do you think that might be God's way of telling you you need to wear shoes next time you do it? I go, there's a hole in my toe. That's all the sympathy I got. She was gone. Completely reframing. So I started reframing, or at least the marketing guy did, reframing the way he looked at how we were doing business. Now, prior to this, and you don't need to raise your hands, but I want you to think about it. Prior to this, I was going out spending all my time looking for customers. I wasn't doing any customer service training. I wasn't giving the finance guy any money to do anything with. But I was looking for customers. And then all of a sudden, when Jeffrey asked me, my buddy, how would our lives be different if we were the recognized authority in our field? I started looking at the people who were the recognized authority in my field in the area of customer service training. And I realized they don't look for customers. That's not what they do. What they do is they get up every morning and they say to themselves, what can I do to position myself in the minds of my customers so that they want to pursue me? And then I started paying really close attention to what these people did. And I noticed there were about 6 things these people did that I wasn't doing. They were the king of the hill. I wanted to be the king of that hill. And I thought, you know, they can teach me what I need to know to get there. So I started watching what it was they were doing. Now, this is what's so cool about successful people. They leave clues to how they got there. And why not follow the clues? From that point forward, everything in my life changed. My business changed, everything changed, everything. So here I am now on Maui, and life is completely different. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what happened? What did you learn that made a difference in your life that can make the same difference in your life? Well, before I give you these 6 components, I want you to think about this as well. One size does not fit all. Would you agree with me on that? Right. There are people that are recognized as authorities in their field, and no 2 of them got there exactly the same way. There are lots of ways to position yourself as an expert in the mind of the people that are important to you, and that's your customer. But here are the things that people do to become recognized as authority in their field. The first thing they do is they come to the realization that in order to be perceived as an expert, I have to, number one, I have to be an expert. I have to spend my time diligently pursuing what I need to know so that I am truly an expert. Earl Nightingale said, if you want to be an expert, it's not a big deal. Take 1 hour a day. That's it. 1 hour a day, every day for 1 year. Study what it is you want to study to become the expert. And at the end of a year, that's the equivalent of, now think about this, that's the equivalent of going to class 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's a 40-hour week, for 2.5 months. Now imagine if you decide you want to be an expert on worms, how much you could learn on worms going to class 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2.5 months. You would truly be a worm expert. There's no doubt about it. So that's number one, become an expert. Number 2, target a market. Oh, this was one of my greatest failures when I started. I was calling on everybody. I did customer service training for everybody. And everybody I called on, you know what they told me? Well, that may work for them, but we're different. Well, the reality was they really weren't that different. Hanging up on people is hanging up on people, for goodness sakes. But they thought they were different. And, you know, that's all that matters, isn't it? So it pays for you to spend your time learning about a customer group that you want to call on. Target and niche that market. Now, I realized just recently, I was interviewing a fellow on my radio show, the Recognized Expert Marketing Show. I interviewed a fellow named Stephen Van Yoder, and he wrote a book called Becoming Slightly Famous. And I was reading this book, and it's a great book, by the way, How to Position Yourself as an Expert. And I was reading this particular article, and I realized I fall into this niche market, and so does my son. We are hot sauce fanatics. Do we have any other hot sauce fanatics in here? You cannot kill me with hot sauce. You can't make me cry. If you can bring me to my knees, you've done something. My son and I, we go to these Thai restaurants, and they say to us, how hot would you like? And we go, what's the hottest you can make it? And they always say Thai hot, and we both look at them and we go, you can do better. And they go, you know, they all say this, you know, we're not responsible if we make it Thai hot and you can't eat it. And my son and I just smile and we go, try it. The next thing, it happens at every restaurant. They start to smile. They walk away, they go into the kitchen. The next thing you see, about 20 seconds later, the kitchen door opens. The chef and a couple other people lean out, and you see the waitress pointing at them. It happens every time. And sure enough, they bring that hot Thai stuff out, and oh yes, we sweat, we're dying. It is certainly not an enjoyable meal, but we get through it. We've never so far had a meal that we couldn't deal with. Well, my wife is constantly looking for hot sauce on our behalf as well. She brought this stuff home called Dave's Insanity Hot Sauce. And you know, it should have been a giveaway. Don't eat this stuff, because on the label it says, not meant for human consumption. You know, that should have been a clue right off the bat. So Josh and I decided, okay, 1 drop in a bowl of chili. We couldn't do it. We could not do it. So anyway, I'm reading Stephen Van Yoder's book, and he interviewed Dave, the guy that invented this hot sauce. And I'm going, this guy is my hero, for goodness sake. We read about Dave, and Dave was just in the hot sauce business, hundreds of people in the hot sauce business. But he decided he was going to separate himself by creating the hottest hot sauce that could possibly create it. And he was doing a fine job with it, et cetera, but it wasn't until he was at a food show where one of the judges had a small, let's just call it a cardiac arrest, after trying Dave's stuff. Threw Dave out of the contest, and from that point forward, Dave just took off. But he picked a market and he decided to be different. He niched at what he did. So think about it. Can you do that? Can you niche? Can you become the expert? You can. Can you pick a market, and can you be different? It's really important. All right, so how do you position yourself as an expert? Here's how you do it. One way to do it, and again, remember, one size does not fit all. One way to do it is you can write a book. How many people here have written a book before? Well, we've got a couple folks here. When you write a book, something automatically happens. You are automatically the expert in the field, automatically. Imagine sitting on an airplane and somebody says, oh, what do you do for a living? And you go, I blah, 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 blah. And they say to you, what do you know about blah, 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 blah? And you go, I wrote the book, blah, 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 blah. Would that be I cannot wait until I have my book finished and I can go, I wrote the book. There's some power in that. Now it's gotten to the point where speaker bureaus, by the way, if you're interested in speaking, they ask you, have you written a book before they'll ever even take you on? Because it gives you instant credibility. Now what's interesting, they say statistically that most people don't read more than the first 18 pages of any book. So if you're going to write a book, make sure those first 18 pages are great. And then just give it to the people that you want to perceive to position you as an expert in your field. So write a book. Number 2 is write articles. And this is what these folks were doing. The people that were recognized as expert in my field, they were writing articles all over the place. How-to articles, fix this article. They identified problems and had solutions. And I'm reading their stuff going, this is great stuff. And I'm telling my customers, oh, read so-and-so's article. It's a great article. And I thought to myself, how stupid is that? They should be reading my article. I should be passing out my articles. But when you write an article and somebody reads your article, there you go, perceived expert. Let me tell you something else. It's number 3. Instead of writing the article, have somebody in the media write an article and quote you as the expert. Well, Bob Sommers, the author of blah, 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 says so-and-so. And all of a sudden, the perception in the customer's mind of you is even greater than if you wrote that article yourself. I have a friend currently, my friend Jeffrey I told you about, the fellow that asked me the question, how would your life be different? He's in the paper. You go to Yahoo News, and you will see no less than 5 times every day his name shows up in one paper somewhere across the world. And he has decided that that's the route he's going to go. He is going to be the guy who's the expert that the media calls when they need a quote. You can go to his website, and he's so creative because the media is always looking for a quote, and he sleeps at least 8 hours a day. Media doesn't care. They're calling all the time. He has a little section called the Jeffrey Kagan Quote-O-Matic for the media. So you can go to his Quote-O-Matic page, and there's a quote right there they can pull out and just put in there for you. Here's the next one, public speaking. Wow. It separates you from the crowd, doesn't it? If you get up here and stand up and you decide to say something, anything, it separates you from everybody else. And again, it positions you somehow, some way as an expert. Being on the internet is another way. Right now, you look at most internet pages. How many of you have your own internet page or your site for your business? I want you to consider some things about your internet site. Are you doing what it takes so that people want to come to your site again and again and again and again? So here's some questions I'll ask you. Number 1, is it just a brochure or is it an information site? Do you have a tell-a-friend feature on there? Are you accumulating a list of names of people who you send a newsletter to? Are you providing new information, articles, radio shows, whatever it may be, so that people constantly want to come to your site again and again and again and again, so that they see you as the person that's providing solutions to their problems? If you're not doing that, think about reworking your site so you get to that point. Now, as I mentioned briefly, what I'm doing now is I'm hosting something called the Recognized Expert Marketing Show. Yay! 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 And for the few of you in here that haven't been there yet, you can listen to the show at recognizedexpert.com. And in there so far, I've interviewed 50 best-selling marketing authors. Now, these are people who have written books, and they'll talk to you in 20-minute intervals about how you can write your book, how to organize your book, how to write your book. They'll talk to you about, with references and resources, how to put your website together, how to use search engine optimization, how to use a tell-a-friend feature, how to accumulate a list of customers. They'll talk to you about how to give public presentations, how to give free presentations and profit from it, how to write articles, where to write articles. It's loaded with interviews of best-selling marketing authors from all over the world where you can go and you can learn some great things. Now, earlier I mentioned, briefly, that one size does not fit all. And my wife is the queen of one size does not fit all as well. I want you to know that I have the most beautiful yard in my entire neighborhood. And I know you know that. You've been there, haven't you? I have the prettiest grass in the entire neighborhood. I have in my yard the Yard of the Month sign. I own that sign. I mean, I own that sign. And when I say I own the sign, I mean I went to Home Depot, I purchased the sign. It's in my yard. And I'm a fanatic about my grass. I have 2 teenage boys. I do not allow them to cut the grass, which may sound odd, because they're not going to cut it right. So anyway, here it is. My mom's coming in from St. Louis to visit. And I thought, oh, I've got to cut the grass. But my mom's coming. I got to cut the grass. And I'm looking at my watch and going, you know, it's a 30-minute drive to the airport. I have 15 minutes before my mom arrives, and I'm like, oh, should I cut the grass or should I get my mom? And it was only like a 13-hour trip, and I decided I'd start the lawnmower. Anyway, my wife runs out. She's like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? I said, I've got to get this yard cut. It's not perfect. Turn that off and go get your mom. So I turn it off, and I go to my older son, and I said, Josh, I need you to cut the grass. I know you've never done this before. I'm going to draw for you quickly a 10-plan step on how this has to be done. So each step, here's how the lawnmower is, sharpen the blades, you have to cut it diagonally this time, da-da-da. He's like, Dad, I got it. I go to get my mom at the airport. We come back, and my mom comments, which a lot of people do, oh, the yard of the month. I go, yeah, I get that all the time. She's like, the yard's beautiful, and I'm all proud. The yard looks great. So I go inside, and I'm looking for my son, my older son, and he wasn't there. My younger son was there. I said, Joel, where's Josh? He said, Dad, as soon as you left, a car full of girls came. Asked him if he'd like to go to the beach, and he took off. Well, I didn't know this at the time, but they had made an agreement. If a car full of girls ever drives by and asks one of them to go to the beach, the other will take over their chores. I think that's smart. So I said, Joel, I really appreciate you following my 10-step plan on cutting the grass. And he said, what 10-step plan? It didn't make any difference. So here's my point. There are a lot of ways to become the recognized authority in your field, a lot of ways to do it. And pick the way that suits you best. Because they're all going to get you there one way or another, aren't they? And I know you can do it. Every one of you can do it. And I hope when you leave here this evening that tomorrow when you wake up, instead of asking yourself this question, how am I going to get some more customers tomorrow? I hope you ask yourself this question and it will change your life. What can I do today to draw customers to me? You guys, thank you.